Hello everyone, and it is that time yet again to talk about my favourite movies of the past year. And I've got to be honest, 2018 was a bit of a weird one for movies. It started off pretty decent, but then as soon as the summer started, the quality of movies gradually went downhill, and I honestly don't know why. To the point where a lot of the highly anticipated releases actually ended up being some of the more disappointing ones of the year. Luckily, I think the last few months of 2018 managed to save the quality of movies because we actually ended up getting some of the best movies of the year within that gap of September to December. So yeah, 2018, bit of a weird one, especially when you compare it to 2017, which was just consistently good, if not great. 2018 was just, best way to describe it, a really mixed bag. Now, like usual, before I get into my list, there are a few things I must make clear about said list, just so none of you get confused. First of all, I have not seen every movie that was released in 2018. That would just be, well, impossible. But that's also because there's a couple of movies that I really wanted to see but unfortunately didn't get the chance to, such as Hereditary and Searching. But there are other movies that I also really want to see and will probably be on other people's end of the year list, but they haven't actually come out in the UK yet. A couple that spring to mind are The Favourite and Green Book. They don't come out until the first few months of January 2019. So yeah, they don't technically count as 2018 releases here in the UK, which is kind of annoying. Secondly, this list is entirely my own personal opinion, so if the placement of a movie on this list doesn't agree with where you would place it, then I'm sorry, that's not what I was intending to do. I was just expressing which movies I liked more than others in 2018. I wasn't trying to appeal to a certain person, I'm just showing you what my favourite movies of the year were. Which leads on to my third point, which is that the rating that I initially gave a movie does not necessarily correspond with where said movie is placed on the list. For example, a 8 out of 10 movie might be higher than a 9 out of 10 movie. And that's because when ranking a movie on this list, I mainly look at two specific criterias. How entertaining did I find that movie, and how much rewatchability do I think that movie has? After I've considered those factors is then when I start to consider the rating that I gave it, and even then it's not really that big of a factor in where the movie's placed. And my fourth and final thing is that, of course, there are honourable mentions like there are every year, and this year I have quite a few to get through, so without any further ado, my honourable mentions for 2018 are First Man, Isle of Dogs, Black Klansman, Cold War, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, A Quiet Place, Happy New Year Colin Bursted, Bad Times at the El Royale, and Black Mirror Bandersnatch. Now I just want to clarify about that last one. I adore Bandersnatch. I love the concept, I love everything about it, and I will do a proper review within the next few days or the next week or so of Bandersnatch. But the thing is, the reason it doesn't get a place on the list, despite how much I love it, is because even though it is quite clearly a film, and it is being marketed as a film, and when you watch it, it is quite clearly a movie, there is still something in the back of my head that is thinking, because it's got the Black Mirror name on it, I'm still associating it with the TV show, therefore not fully making it count as a movie. I know it's a weird reason, and my brain works differently, I suppose, and it's just weird because of that. But that is the main reason why it's not placed on the list. If I had more confidence in me knowing it's a full-on movie, then yes, it would definitely be on the list, quite high up actually. But it's that little thing niggling in the back of my head that's telling me, because it's got the Black Mirror name, it's still associated with the TV show, that's kind of stopping it from being in the list. But the most I can do is put it in the honourable mentions. So without any further ado, let's get into this list with number 10. They Shall Not Grow Old is probably one of the best, but also one of the most unique documentaries I've seen in quite a long time. And it's not just because of the technical aspect that Peter Jackson was able to pull off in terms of updating the footage. That stuff is impressive, yes. But it's the other stuff, the stuff you're actually hearing from the veterans that actually makes the documentary that whole lot more engaging and gives an entire new level that you probably weren't expecting when going into the documentary, which grants it a place on my best of the year list just because of how eye-opening I think it was. The fact that the soldiers didn't really treat the war as a horrible thing, they just more treated it as another thing to do rather than the stuff they could be doing back at home. I thought that was all fascinating stuff, and the technology aspect of the whole thing, with the updated footage, the coloured and sped up footage, absolutely brilliant. Some of the most impressive stuff I've seen all year, and the fact that it kind of gives it a much more human and realistic perspective on the whole war scenario just makes it that bit more impactful and earns it a place on my list. I still, to this day, stand by my one major complaint with Annihilation. And that's the fact that the major complaint I have about the film isn't really about the film. It's the fact that here in the UK, we didn't get it in cinemas. That's the biggest complaint I have about this film. We got it on Netflix and not in the cinemas, and this is definitely a movie that I would have loved to have seen in the cinemas or on a bigger screen. But even though I was forced to watch it on my TV, I still was blown away by Annihilation. The acting was all brilliant, the effects were just amazing, and the themes that it had to show were just brilliantly well executed. There were a few things that I didn't quite know how to take at first, but that's kind of the point, because Annihilation makes you think. It makes you work it out for yourself. And the fact that it's one of those movies that sinks in the more you think about it just makes it that whole much better. That's right, at number 8 we have the most recent movie I reviewed on this channel, which is Alfonso Cuarón's Roma. Now, like I said in my review, and also kind of what I just said with Annihilation, this is a movie that you can take one way or the other when you first watch it, but you really need to take the time to really appreciate it and let it sink in. I don't think you're going to get the full impact of Roma or Annihilation on a first viewing. If you do, then that's great. But the whole point of these movies is to let them sink in over time and let the themes and ideas of that film seep in that way, and it becomes a whole lot better because of that. Because like I said in my review for Roma, when I first watched it, I really liked it. But the more I think about it, the better it gets, to the point where I'm happy enough to put it on my best of the year list. But besides that aspect, everything else about Roma is near perfect. The cinematography and everything in the filmmaking aspect is gorgeous and masterful. The acting is great, especially considering that there are a lot of first-time actors in the movie. And the use of no soundtrack makes it just a little bit better. What do I say about Mission Impossible Fallout that has not already been said? The stunts are incredible, and Tom Cruise is a madman. I mean, I don't quite know what else to say. This movie is really, really good. I mean, the stunts are, like I just said, amazing. This movie easily contains one of my favourite fight scenes of probably the last 5 to 10 years, that being the bathroom fight scene, just brilliantly well executed. But yeah, it's really well done. All of the actors know what they're doing now. They've been doing it for so long that they kind of know it off by heart at this point, and it really shows. That being said, and this is not a criticism because the movie is still placed on my list for crying out loud. I loved the movie, but I do think it was slightly overhyped at the time. Because people were saying, oh, it's one of the best action movies of the decade, up there with Mad Max Fury Road. And yeah, it is very good and the stunts are incredible, but when I reviewed this movie, I was mostly comparing it to the other Mission Impossible films. And when comparing it to the other Mission Impossible films, yes, it is miles better than a lot of them. Whether it's one of the best action movies of the decade, though, slightly debatable, especially considering the plot is quite, in a sense, generic. But I'm not saying I don't like the movie. I'm just kind of saying it as it is in my head. I do not hate the movie at all, though. I love the movie, think it's very well executed for what it is. And I mean, hell, it's on my list, so it must mean something, right? At number 6, we have one of the most overlooked movies of the year with Blind Spotting. I mean, it's simple. Not enough people saw this film. If you did see this film, you know how good it is. But unfortunately, because its release was so limited, hardly anyone saw it. You kind of had to go out of your way to try and find it and watch it. But like I said, if you have seen it, you know how good this movie is. The performances are all great, especially from the main two actors. They're just brilliant in this movie. The cinematography is fantastic, the score fantastic, and this movie also contains both the funniest scene of the year and also one of the most hard-hitting scenes I've seen all year. And the fact that the movie is able to do both of them in the same film is just... well, it's just amazing. I'm trying to get as many people in my friend group to see it as possible because I really do think this went under a lot of people's radar in 2018. And it's a real shame because this very quickly became one of my favourites of the year from the moment I saw it. So yeah, I'm trying to get as many people as possible to watch it because if you haven't seen it, you're really missing out. Now, I know what most of you are going to say. You Were Never Really Here is technically a 2017 release, which is true, but here in the UK we got it in March, so it really does count as a 2018 release. Either way, though, that does not stop it from being a bloody great movie. This is probably one of Joaquin Phoenix's best performances, and that's saying something, because he's great in almost everything I've seen him in. The cinematography is fantastic. Lynn Ramsey knows how to direct. She's just brilliant here. And yeah, if you, again, have not seen this movie, you're doing yourself a disservice, because this is one of the best thrillers I've seen in a long time. It manages to balance really kind of disturbing violence with interestingly executed psychological themes that both kind of go hand in hand. And if you've seen the movie, or as the movie eventually shows you, there is a reason for both, and I think the way it handles everything in this film is just fantastic. My number 4 entry is Widows. This movie was just brilliant. I mean, I don't quite know how else to put this. It was just very well executed from almost every aspect. Gillian Flynn's script worked perfectly with Steve McQueen's very artistic eye for direction. And then you have a plethora of great actors giving amazing performances to the point where there is no weak link in the acting, making it a near flawless movie. Everything about this movie just works so well. I don't think it's Steve McQueen's best film. Still think that goes to 12 Years a Slave. But, that being said, the guy had kind of raised the bar very high for himself anyway. So I don't think anything was going to be as great as his first 3 films. That being said, Widows does come pretty damn close, and is very good for the type of movie it was trying to be, actually making it a lot better than a lot of your average crime heist thrillers out there today. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse surprised a lot of people, including myself, and that's saying something, considering 2018 was actually a pretty decent year for animation. If this movie hadn't been as good as it was, then Isle of Dogs would have easily been on this list. And that's saying something because I loved Isle of Dogs. But Spider-Man had something special about it. The animation was just so breathtakingly unique, and the story and the way it treated its characters was just so good that you kind of couldn't ignore this movie. Whether you weren't that keen on it or not, there is always something to appreciate in this film. And this has very quickly also become one of the best, if not one of my favourite Spider-Man movies ever. Whether it's my favourite is up for debate, because I love Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man Homecoming so much, so it's a very tough fight between those 3, but trust me, if you're a fan of Spider-Man, this movie is essential, because this is a movie made for Spider-Man fans, by Spider-Man fans. And now I present to you the hidden gem of 2018, which is Thunder Road. This movie's bloody brilliant, and I'm kind of annoyed it was stuck in a festival run for the entire year, because that means not many people were able to see it, unless you lived in the USA, which then it was on video on demand. If you have seen it though, you will know how brilliant this film is. Every aspect of this movie is bloody fantastic. The fact that Jim Cummings is the director, the writer, and also the main actor in the movie, and the fact that he nails all of those aspects, amazing. The way the movie looks is great, and the fact that it's one of those movies that one minute will have you crying, and the next will have you in fits of laughter, is a very hard thing to do. I've tried doing that in some of my short films in the past, trying to balance emotion with humour, and it never quite fully works. But when it is done right in a movie, I have to applaud the filmmaker for getting it right. And it doesn't necessarily work that well all the time, especially in a lot of films. But here, it works perfectly. If you haven't seen Thunder Road, or let alone haven't even heard of it, then really give it a chance if you ever see it pop up somewhere. Watch it, take the first chance you get to watch this film, because as soon as I came away from watching this at the London Film Festival, I knew I had seen something special. And I don't say that with most movies. Now, I know this might have been a bit of a predictable choice, seeing that it's the only film I gave a 10 out of 10 to this year, but fuck it. Avengers Infinity War is my favourite movie of the year, and I have no shame in saying that whatsoever. This movie did everything. How can I not give this the number 1 spot? This movie did everything I expected it to do, as well as a load of shit I did not expect it to do. And the fact that it is still coherent and entertaining and action-packed with good action for once, I just have to applaud the Russo brothers, because they pulled off what was probably the hardest film anyone should ever have to make. And they nailed everything. So guys, that was my end of the year list for 2018. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments down below what your favourite movie of the year was. And I just want to say thank you for 2018 being one of the best years I've had on YouTube. I was able to start a lot of new series that I've been wanting to try out for quite some time, like Under the Radar. I do hope to continue that in 2019. It's just that, you know, I've had a lot of university work, and getting reviews out as soon and as quick as I can has also stopped me from writing another episode of Under the Radar, but it is something I do desperately want to continue in the future. Thank you for almost getting me to 200 subscribers. I know I'm not there yet. I'm at about 198, but again, just thank you to everyone who's subscribed to the channel in this past year. Let alone if you've even just watched a video or liked it or commented. Again, I appreciate every single thing that you guys throw my way. I have this series of reviews that I'm going to try and do for the whole year, kind of like how Chris Stuckman did his pre-1970s review series for all of 2018. I'm going to try and do something similar, but with anime. Every month I will be reviewing an anime TV show or film once a month for the entire year, just because I want to talk about anime a bit more. It's something that I want to get into just that bit more. I mean, I've already started talking about it on this channel with Batman, Batman Ninja or A Silent Voice, and it is something I want to talk about a bit more, so expect to see more of that in the coming months. And yeah, I look forward to what 2019 offers. If you enjoyed the video, then give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Bye.